What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Concrete Edge right here on Deco-Crete TV.
My name is Jeff.
And on today's episode, we're going to talk about different ways of patching concrete. We're going to go over a few different mixes and cover a variety of concrete finishes, so stay tuned and you're going to learn all about it. So I'm sure you guys have all heard the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and man, is that a true statement when it comes to patching concrete. I mean, there are so many different products out there that honestly it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're new at this. And sometimes it just all comes down to preference, while other times it's really important to use the right product for the situation. So before we even get started on the patching, we just need to talk a little bit about expectations. So when you're patching up a flaw in concrete, man, sometimes you can nail it right away, but other times it just seems like no matter what you do, you just can't get it to blend in perfectly. And this can be hard for someone like me because I'm really OCD. I mean, I used to do most of the patching for the crew that I worked on in my 20s, and I'm guessing that they had me do this because I really paid attention to details, which is a good thing for patching concrete. I mean, there's nothing worse than a sloppy patch job. But sometimes the thing that makes you good at something is the same thing that causes you to struggle. So when I was first starting out with patching, I mean, the final product was turning out good, but man, I was just constantly redoing them, which just took forever, and I still ended up disappointed a lot of the times. Well, they must have thought the work was good, however, because I kept getting sent out on patch jobs, but my boss did give me a piece of advice with one simple phrase. A patch is a patch, and it's just always going to be a patch. Now, I know this might sound a little bit weird to some of you, but if you've been pouring concrete for a while, I think you know what I mean. So after that, I took a different approach and things just got a lot better. So just do the best job you can and don't stress out if it's not perfect, because believe me, it won't be. Now, in an attempt to stay on track for this video, we're going to break things down by different types of concrete finishes, and the first one up is stamped concrete. And honestly, this one's actually pretty simple. I mean, really a mixture of color hardener and water is probably all you're going to need for most jobs. Now, if the concrete was colored with hardener, I mean, all you gotta do is just grab a bucket of that same color and some bonding agent. So for deeper patches, just mix the color hardener up with water and make it into a slurry, paint it a little bit of that bonding agent down into the spot that needs patch, and just fill it up. Now, you can even put a little bit of release on it and texture with a small skin if you want. Now, if the patches are shallow, you're gonna need to sift some of that color hardener first just to get the large sand out of it. And if the patch is really small, you probably don't even have to texture it. You can just smooth it over with a small trowel, or my favorite tool, the finger trowel. Now, for integral color jobs, this is going to be a little bit more challenging because you're probably going to have to mix a few different colors together to get a good match. Now, there is always the option of mixing integral color into gray concrete patch, but in my experience, color hardeners are going to get you just as close, and I just think it's easier. So for a full tutorial on patching stamped concrete, please check out Jason's Technique of the Week video on fixing pop-outs, and he'll walk you through the whole thing step by step. Now, if the concrete is colored but not stamped, you can still use the same advice from this section to get the color right. You're just going to have to use a brush or some kind of other tool to create the texture if it's swirled or broomed. And you know, that kind of leads us into the next section, which is broomed and swirled concrete. And for this, the go-to option is just some kind of gray patch material like Easy Patch or Trowel Overlay from Deco-Crete. And Easy Patch is really probably the most versatile of these products because, I mean, while it might not be the very best one for every job, it's the one that's going to work for pretty much anything. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been faced with something unexpected on a job site, and just having a bag of something like Easy Patch on hand just saved an extra trip back to the shop, back to the job again to fix it up. I mean, just something as simple as busting a chunk of concrete off when you're pulling forms, I mean, it can be fixed up in no time with Easy Patch. All we gotta do is mix a little bit of it up, fill up the damaged area, pull a paintbrush across it, and boom, we're done. Now, if it's rainy season, another thing that can happen is you show up the next day to cut your concrete just to realize that you had water that dripped off the overhangs all night long. And even though the concrete was able to handle the rain, it just wasn't ready for those drips, and it ended up washing some of the surface away. And again, just having that bag of Easy Patch with you is going to solve the problem quickly. Now, all the stuff we just talked about in this section is going to be the same thing for swirled concrete. You're just going to have to use your fingers or some other kind of tool to create the texture instead of a paintbrush. Honestly, you can blend patches into broomed or swirled concrete pretty well. It's the color difference that's going to make them stick out. Now, these two products right here are both considered gray, but the Easy Patch is a little bit darker. Matching the shade of uncolored concrete perfectly every time is going to be tough because it just seems to vary a little bit from day to day, just depending on the different batches of cement or what type of aggregate, and even admixtures can make it a little bit different. So it's up to you to decide how picky you want to get with this. I mean, some people just use it right out of the bag and it is what it is, while others are willing to adjust from job to job. Now, if you are going to try to change the color a little bit, Trowel Overlay works really good for this because it comes in both white and gray, and you can just mix those two together 1-to-1 as a great starting point and then just adjust from there. Now, if you need to lighten up Easy Patch on the other hand, I mean, pretty much all you can do is just add some white pigment to it. Now, smooth trowel concrete, this one's going to be a little bit harder to blend it in. Now, you don't have any of that texture to hide the imperfections, and the finish of the patch is just not going to be as smooth as it is on the floor. Now, this is where I really used to struggle because you just have to remember that it is a patch and you're probably always going to see it. And the repair will be functional, which is the main purpose, but you're just going to have to live with the differences in the color and the finish. Now, Easy Patch and Trowel Overlay are still good options for this, but on finished concrete, sometimes a hydraulic cement or something like a rapid set cement all is just going to get you a little bit smoother and set up faster. And most of the time, you know, when you're patching smooth concrete, it's really more of a functional thing. And if it's in a factory and they need to be driving a forklift on it in a short amount of time, then Easy Patch and Trowel Overlay, they're just going to be too slow. And sometimes the best thing might not even be anything cementitious. Now, a fast-setting resin-based product like Quik Fix can be a real lifesaver. I mean, you can fix up an offset in the doorway or between two slabs, and they can be driving on it in as little as 30 minutes. Now, Quik Fix can also be helpful in fixing pop-outs on exposed aggregate concrete. I mean, just drop a little bit down in there, push a piece of aggregate in there, and it'll just kind of glue it down. Now, this is going to take a little bit of experience to make it look right, so make sure you practice this one before you take it to a job site. So that should cover pretty much all the flat concrete situations, but what about concrete walls? And really, this one's just going to depend on what kind of wall we're talking about. So if it's a decorative vertical concrete wall and the purpose of the patch is to get it looking as natural as possible, well, you're probably going to have to mess around with it a little bit. But I would always start with the same mix you used to carve the wall. You're just probably going to have to sift the heavy sand out of it and maybe mess around with the color a little bit. Now, if it's just a structural concrete wall, I would treat that like a smooth concrete floor. Now, if you have a lot of patches that aren't blending in very well and your customer wants the whole wall or slab to all look uniform, well, you're probably just going to have to resurface the entire area after the patching. SureBond 100 works great as a bonding agent for any of these mixes, and just make sure to follow the instructions on mixing and maximum thicknesses because there's going to be some differences there. Well guys, that's pretty much it for today's show. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and man, we really appreciate all the support that you guys show to the channel by tuning in every week and hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Now please leave us a comment if we missed anything or if you have any questions on patching concrete. If you're already subscribed, don't forget about that bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and it really helps our channel out. So from all of us here at Deco-Crete TV, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.